Hello and welcome to Communicating Your Vision. I'm Daniel, and today's topic is using storytelling to communicate more dynamically. This is a topic that's really personal to me because although I grew up in a small town named Penticton a long time ago now, a town whose only claim to fame was that it was the home of the Penticton V's, a junior A hockey team, and where the only thing to do really was to swim and water ski in the lakes. Despite all that, I was that odd, nerdy kid who spent most of his time reading. I was always, although I joined Boy Scouts and went hiking in those dusky hills, I was the kid who was always in the library and always had his nose in a book, reading uh, literature and fiction that was way beyond my grade read. So it wasn't a surprise to anyone when I went off to university, and everyone assumed that I was on my way to being a high school teacher. And so did I, until I spent a year as an intern grade 11 English teacher after graduating from university. And that's when I found out that high school students don't really care about literature, stories about other people. They're too busy figuring their own selves out. And so, as an English teacher, I was having to constantly pump energy into the room with maybe one or two kids who'd be motivated. And at the end of an exhausting day, I'd walk out and see 80 kids in the band room hanging out with the music teacher, and 50 kids in the shop hanging out with the shop teacher. Um, whereas, as an English teacher, it was just constantly an uphill struggle. So at the end of that year, uh, I went full time in the Army. I'd joined as a reservist while I was at university. And so, after finding that teaching high school wasn't for me, I spent the next 20 years as an officer in the Royal Canadian Armored Corps. And I figured storytelling and literature, well, that was just going to be a hobby from now on. It hadn't worked out, and reading and literature was something I just do for pleasure in my spare time. After retiring from the Army, I joined the continuing studies wing at Langara College, first as a manager and then for the last 7 years as dean. And as I worked my way up through the continuing studies jobs, I became interested in just the various management techniques that were needed at the different levels, and how leadership, which I'd experienced in the Army, was applied in this very different setting. Pretty soon, I was teaching workshops on personal productivity, management skills, and leadership. And the more that I got into the study of leadership and management as a skill that you could teach, the more I realized that the great leaders that I'd known in my own career and the ones that I was studying as part of this teaching, as part of this professional development teaching, were all great storytellers. Whether it was Colonel David Michael Day, who commanded the Canadian Battle Group while I was in Bosnia, or Vicky Vogel, who developed our English for Academic program from scratch, or Steve Jobs, who in the world of business took storytelling to a high art. The great leaders that I knew and that I studied all had a vision, and all shared that vision so much more effectively and so much more dynamically through their ability to tell stories. And so, what I realized at the end is that none of that time that I'd spent as a nerdy kid had been wasted after all. That those stories that I'd enjoyed were more than just a pastime or a hobby, because telling stories is something that resonates deeply with every person. We think of human beings as the tool-using animal, but in reality, lots of other animals use tools. What makes humans unique are that we are the storytelling animal, and we have been for 65,000 or more years since the earliest cave paintings. And stories still resonate deeply with us. And stories that combine a specific setting, a sympathetic character, and a plot that takes that character on a journey, those stories have an enormous ability to move us. And if you can incorporate them in your message, it will become all the more powerful for it. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions, as usual, please leave a comment in the discussion boards. Until then, thank you for your time and attention, and all the best for your day. Bye for now.